Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you so much for joining our second episode of our behind the scenes series. So today we are exploring Atlas Ocean Voyages Epicurean Expeditions, a concept that brings together food, culture, and storytelling to the heart of expedition cruising. So I am joined today by Mara Papatheodorou. I pronounce it correctly, hopefully,
Yes.
Master Foodie and former Bon Appetit editor, and Jason O'Keefe, who is the Senior Director of Guest Experiences at Atlas Ocean Voyages. So together we will uncover and explore how cuisine connects travelers more deeply to the destinations they explore and why food might just be the new frontier of expedition cruising. So welcome to both of you. I'm really delighted to have you, and thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you.
Thanks.
It's a pleasure to be with you.
And Mara is actually currently on board the ship in Rome, so I'm being told. So let's start this conversation by a question. I've got a question to both of you. So Atlas has introduced Epicurean expeditions as a quite distinctive way of experiencing destination. So what does this concept mean to each of you personally, and how did it come? How does it come alive to your clients? So Mara, would you like to start?
Yeah, I'm going to actually turn it to Jason to start how they
Okay.
created this idea because they came to me. We've all known each other in the travel world. And I am a taste and traditions expert. When I was at Bon Appetit magazine, I was the travel editor and was in charge of creating a special issue that we did annually about a different region or country in Europe mostly. And so we had done some programs with cruise lines, and this is how I met some of this wonderful team. And we've all landed here, and they reached out to me, and I couldn't be more thrilled. So Jason, you explain how you guys designed it, and then I'll tell you where we went.
Certainly, and thank you so much, Mara. And Akvil, it's a pleasure to be with you here and with our travel advisors that are watching in. Epicurean Expeditions is quite special to us. It's our third year this summer of executing the Epicurean Expeditions concept aboard our intimate fleet of small ships. And ultimately, it's really all about immersive experiences, getting close to the local culture, tasting it through food and wine and local beverages, for example. But that small ship aspect is really what kind of defines this experience overall. We're finding that a lot of non-traditional cruisers that maybe are fearful of those bigger ships, that are fearful of the long lines, but yet want, that immersive, up close, boutique style ports of call that maybe they haven't been able to visit on some other experiences. So they might be port collectors, for example. They're gravitating towards Atlas because of the high quality of our yachts that we have. We have some very high styled design and custom furnishings on board. That's generally what kind of interests them initially, at least through travel advisors and consumers alike. But then it's the destinations that really draws them in. And we ultimately connect that through food and beverage. And like I said, in a small ship scale, guests get to put their hands on, they get to meet our local chefs and guest experts that we have on board. Ultimately, a lot of travel agents and consumers probably know about us through our polar expeditions, where we go to the Arctic and to the Antarctic regions. But during the summer seasons, we position the ship in Europe as well as in Northern Europe to explore a little bit more deeply into these destinations. And like I said, connect it through the culinary aspect. And we take off that traditional expedition team and replace it with guest chefs or gastronomic experts, local vintners. We have a lot of local experts that will come on and visit us for the day, whether they're conducting a local tasting or bringing local wines on board, for example. So unique experiences throughout the journey. It isn't just necessarily one activity that defines it. Each journey is unique in its own right. That's what makes it ultimately or authentically Atlas.
Brilliant. Well, that's a great introduction. Mara, you are known for blending food, folklore, and culture. So, how do you bring these elements together on board to create something more than just a dining experience?
Well, I think it goes to the expedition term when Atlas, James Rodriguez, and Jason and the team came to me, knowing my culinary and cultural background. in storytelling, and I did train as a chef, but I became a journalist and an editor instead. I've traveled always. I come from a cross-cultural marriage, so some of that understanding on a deeper level personally, you don't realize who you are and what you know until it sort of starts to evolve in a different way. And so when we were talking about this, and I think the keyword expedition in my mind means adventure. And as Jason touched on, the Arctic, the Antarctic, but culinary and food is something that we can all relate to. And I always say, whether you eat to live or live to eat, like I do, you don't have to be a cook to learn, to understand, to appreciate where you are or why it is the way it is. And the thing about the Mediterranean, it is such a bountiful of tastes and traditions, uh, separated very much by islands or boundaries, and certainly history that then unites or diversifies. And so to do that, to go into the ports and to show things that people know about, I think my time at Bon Appetit, we really did a lot of deeper dive storytelling and bringing that as an armchair journey. So to be able to bring it to our travelers and to intrigue all of them. So we do the excursions when we get into port that they sign up for, whether it's a visit to a winery or to a farm and a cheesemonger, into a home for a cooking class. I do a lot of culinary commentating. I work with chefs all over the world. And so to sort of be the storyteller hand in hand with our guest chefs who are very good about bringing wherever we are, bringing those and immersing those flavors into the recipes and the dishes that we serve on board. As Jason touched upon, in port, there may be some excursions, but also on board, I do tasting lectures. We
Mm-hmm.
do, for instance, a honey tasting where we show different types of honey right where we're sailing. So it brings the flavors alive right there. And I think the intimate yacht experience, because it is smaller, it is a refined ship. So we are refined in our delivery, but we're also relaxed and embracing where we are and sort of allowing whoever you are, whatever level of interest in food you have. I can honestly tell you, 3 years in, I've not had one passenger say they didn't walk away knowing something, enjoying a taste of something. And I think that Atlas intimacy allows for that, and that we respect where we're going, and the ship can go to smaller places that travelers may not have ever been to. They may know Italy, but they don't know these little ports, or they may know Greece, but they don't know the smaller islands, which the big ships just can't get to.
And so how does a typical day on Epicurean expedition look like?
Haha.
You picked my curiosity.
It
Is it
works.
something like typical
Yeah, there's
day?
two ways. One is when we're
Mhm.
on board, and the other is
Yeah.
in port. And many of our travelers and guests who plan ahead, obviously, the excursions are available for them to
Mm.
review before they board, so they know what's on offer. And we certainly encourage them to sign up before we go. And many of those excursions, and again, culturally too, we blend it. There are things to do archaeologically, museum-wise, and then very strongly on the Epicurean front if that's of interest. So as Jason touched on, that connection of culture and cuisine, I say, I carry my culinary compass in one hand and my passport in the other, and I feel that's what we are offering to our travelers. We're gearing up their senses and encouraging them to try things, but then also taking them in port, as Jason said, to a cooking class or to a
Mhm.
winery. And because we're smaller, we're getting that deeper dive. So we organize those in advance per the requests of what we're finding in our surveys and talking. And certainly I know on the trends of what people are interested in, because don't forget, these travelers are home cooks or just
Mm.
travelers who want to understand the traditions better. And of course, with the folklore come the stories of why the ingredients are here. And I always say too, behind every taste, there is a tradition, but behind every
Mhm.
tradition, there is a taste. And the tastes come from what grows there, which are all very similar on our Mediterranean platform, but it's through the traditions of what each culture does. I mean, when you're in France, for instance, southern France, if you're in Nice, it's very different when you just go 100 miles and you end up in Corsica. So and that has so much to do with what the people who live there do with what they have. And that makes an interesting story, and it makes an interesting excursion for our travelers. And they are sort of excited by it because it kind of opens their eyes and certainly gears up their senses. And they come back saying, I didn't know that and I enjoyed that and I want to know more. And then on
Mhm.
board, we do different tastings. Like I said, a honey
Yeah.
tasting, as Jason referenced, a local winemaker when we have the time in port. For those that
Mhm.
want to do other things, they can experience it right on board. And our chefs, our executive chefs here always have an import dish every night on the menu. So we're continuing to bring it alive. And the guest chefs that sail per journey always infuse the flavors of where we are, which is exciting for the guests too, with our cooking demos and things like that.
Brilliant. You
I-
touched a little, sorry, sorry, Jason,
no,
please,
that's
please
okay.
add on. Yeah. Because I'm
I was
like,
just going to add, the destination certainly takes center stage. And
yeah,
as Mara explained, we do connect that culinary aspect to the destination. That's really what drives the overall essence of the journey. But those traditional shore excursion experiences, whether they're active and adventure, hiking, kayaking, snorkeling, we have all of that, but also those historical or architectural and or tasting elements are woven in where it makes sense. Not every single tour, but a majority of the excursions ashore will incorporate that. We also add a couple of extra special touches that are all inclusive at no extra charge. One of them is our Atlas immersive experience. These are offered once per journey and complimentary, like I said, to all guests, whether it's a local folklore experience that we have on the pier. Next to the ship, or whether we bring them on board the ship. And sometimes it's on a local castle where we do this immersive music and dining
Beautiful. Yeah.
experience to bring that overall essence of local flavor to the guests. And our shipboard team participates, our guest chefs, our expedition team all participates in this. We also do something that's quite unique called the culinary cook-off or
I
our
was going to come
yachtsman
to that. It's
cook-off.
so much fun.
It's probably the highlight of the entire journey, and it's where our guests get to actively participate. And I'll let Mara kind of tell some of the highlights of this, but it is one of the kind of pinnacle experiences of the entire journey because the guests take center stage and they form individual teams, and the guest chefs become the judges. And we provide all the ingredients, and it's varied by each of the individual cruises, so it isn't the same setup each and every time. And it is truly organic based on the people participating. And they get their hands on, make their own dish, and then the team judges it based on the taste, the presentation, and the overall
Creativity.
quality. And it ends up being so competitive on board, and it creates a friendly competition, I should say, but
I hope
also
so.
inspires that engagement amongst each other. And it really does become such a great, memorable activity for those that are participating and those that are watching.
Well, I was going
Okay.
to say, and Jason's, first of all, it is absolutely hands down uniquely Atlas. Nobody else does it, and nobody can do it the way we do it. And it's so much fun because it really does, because we're a small yacht, it really does bring forward and bring together all of the guests. It's usually four teams of two and friends, and we've actually had guests alone or single and like their partner doesn't want to cook and so another will say let's do it together, so it becomes very neighborly, and it is done in all good fun, and we really start it that way and we finish it that way. But what it does is it engages where we are, and the challenge is always connected to the journey in which we have. So we just are in Italy, as I said. So this week's Yachtsman Cook-Off had to do with pasta, and we
Yeah.
had about. And again, one of the things, as you know, with pasta, and this has been eye-opening to these travelers, every region in Italy has a different shaped pasta represents
Mm.
their region. Every sauce has a story. Again, why? Because of what grows there. So it was really fun to see how creative they could be, what they had to do with. We're not quirky in throwing a weird ingredient in. We really want them to have fun with it. We do say it needs to be innovative and creative, and but what really becomes fun is the audience.
Mm.
They're rallying, they're, encouraging, they're kind of in awe. They feel that these eight contestants are very brave. But again, it brings forward the food connection and the cultural and culinary connection to where we are, and also makes it fun because these travelers are loving meeting the guest chefs. Certainly, as a storyteller and the culinary commentating cultural significance. It's all right there. I often say it's right there, you know, on the dish. And so to be engaged in it and then to eat and enjoy, they really feel that they have learned something. And I think when I start my lectures, I always say our goal here is to encourage and to entice and to open your eyes and open your palate and for you to enjoy it. And you may not like some of the things you find, and now you know that. So it literally in travel, this is Atlas does such a beautiful job because this is the best way to taste a culture and the best way to
Absolutely.
feel that you get a deeper dive and you do because we're small. So I
So,
think intimacy makes a very big difference.
so I have a question to you now, Mara.
Yes.
What is the most outstanding dish that you ever tasted with all your knowledge and expertise
It's
cooked
so
by
hard.
a guest?
It's so
And
hard.
let's hope they're not watching. Well, I hope they are watching, but hope the
You
rest
know,
is not watching.
I feel no, it's such a almost impossible question to answer. I, of course, have so much time and respect for any chef and for any master chef and our guest chefs. I always learn from them and what they do, and I think we learn from each other because I have this chef's background. But I have to say the most memorable experiences for me began with and remain with the locals.
Okay.
So to be able to go into someone's home, and I told many of those stories at Bon Appetit. We still do those here today at Atlas, to be able to see what a cheesemonger does on
Mm,
their property and to taste that, you know, fresh mozzarella or that fresh chev goat's cheese. That one bite, that one sip, just wow, brings it all alive for me. And so I think of course, I do have a lot of knowledge from this wonderful journey in my career, but at the same time, I love that I'm always learning. So I
mm,
have a lot of aha moments. I think in Italy, particularly, to fully understand that every region has a different sort of interpretation, if you will,
mm,
of their pasta and their sauce, very, you know, different from France, the same thing. So I think regionally, my aha moments come from, oh, that's what they did with that. I can't say one because no one will ever
mm.
talk to me again. They'll be forever. But I think I have such respect for what you do with what you have and to see what the
Mm,
locals do and how and why they have developed those flavors and to share that with our travelers. Those remain
mm,
every trip my aha moment. And I really mean that, you
mm.
know, like, oh, I learned something too.
And do you think, I mean, this is just a question of curiosity, do you think that people who experience these trips, because I imagine, meeting a producer, meeting somebody who lives and breathes the terroir, all these kind of
Mhm.
things, I think it's sometimes it can be mind-opening for some travelers. Do you think that they go away with more appreciation to what they have back home, or like, or considering how they're going to use what they have, or potentially rethinking how they eat and cook after having experienced something like that?
It's such a wonderful question, and thank you for
Mm,
it. I'm going to give 100%
mm,
yes and shout out. I hope so. I believe so. It's what I love about the
mm,
Atlas team. I mean, when James Rodriguez and his team created this, don't forget, this is unique. We are
mm,
a year-round expedition cruise line now, and I think to learn, right, and to you know, we say here at Atlas that travel changes us
mm,
because you become more aware. So certainly around the table. And I really make this point with our travelers when I
mm,
am doing my talks and tastings because you know, you learn something, you know, even in this Yachtsman cook-off, for instance, I did a honey tasting on board as I always do because honeys are different 50 miles away from each other and Italian honeys are all very different. And one of them used honey in their pasta and it
okay.
actually
Oh,
won. That was the winning dish. So I
wow.
think the fact that, oh, I didn't know that the honeys are different in different regions. Oh, I didn't understand. Wow, basil's really popular in Italy and it does grow in Greece, but they don't use it that much. And this is why. And they begin to take home those ideas and alongside with our gastronomic guest chefs who do demos and we do the recipes, they get to take those recipes home. And so it makes them think. And you know, I always say too, a mouth-watering memory, that's what you want to give them. And
Yeah.
it tastes remarkably amazing when you're sitting, you know, in a piazza or in the
Mm,
square in Couture. But But also here in Capri yesterday, yes, amazing limoncello. But when you have your limoncello back in the United States or in Canada, wherever you are, you're going to remember Capri and you're going to remember that you were on Atlas. And that's a winning combination. And you're going to like limoncello more than you ever thought you could. So yes, I believe that they do walk away with something, whether it's to cook, whether it's to sip, whether it's to remember. So, I do, we say earlier, food unites us. And that to me is the beauty of travel, the beauty of cruising, because we get to take our time a little bit more. So.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Mara. Jason, Jane has a question. What is the maximum number of guests on these trips?
198 guests. We have 99 staterooms on board.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. And by the way, Jane, I think there may be a ship visit in October in UK. So you may as well consider coming and having a look at the ships. They look brilliant.
They're so beautiful.
Yeah, they absolutely are.
I'm on board right now, and that is always people who, and I think Jason touched on this. What's fascinating to talk to the different travelers. Some have been travelers on big ships and have liked that, but they don't like it anymore. Or some have never cruised, but they're intrigued because of the smaller port destinations. And so, but the first comment is always how beautiful the ship is, or the yacht. It's really a yacht. And also how kind the staff is, because that's something else. I think every cruise line obviously does a wonderful training job, but this team here, I cannot emphasize enough the personal touches. They all come to know you by your first name. They're so respectful, and they care. And so, here I'm encouraging sharing is caring, and food unites us, and let's embrace culture and cuisine together. And then we have these incredible international staff here who just care and are thrilled that we're all here to travel and make that experience, as beautiful as it can be.
Brilliant. Well, thank you so much. We'll come back to you, Mara. I'm going to quiz now Jason a little bit. So Jason, obviously you oversee the development of, Atlas onboard programs. And how did this whole idea of Epicurean Expeditions evolve, really? I mean, I know you touched a little bit at the beginning, but there must have been this moment where you guys were sitting somewhere and talking about what role food plays in Atlas journey and how how you came up with this idea, basically.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
No, certainly. Like I said earlier, we were known for our polar operations and going to the North and the South Pole, and we wanted to venture out into the warmer water destinations. And we were brainstorming internally, how do we be distinctive and how do we be unique? And we immediately recognized and kind of centered around culinary because, when we all travel, one of the things that we instinctively talk about is what we tasted and what we remembered from those experiences. And we wanted to incorporate that into the overall cruise experience, not just in a shore excursion activity, but throughout the entire aspects of what the guest will see and do, whether it's in the main dining room with locally inspired dishes that change daily. It's also about plant-based menu items as well, recognizing that we do attract a non-traditional cruiser. They're very conscious about eating well. They're also interested in traveling with companies that do well and are focused on, sustainability and conservation efforts. And certainly our yachts are state of the art. We've got, propulsion that's hybrid propulsion jets that help us turn off the propellers, for example, so we don't disturb the marine habitats. We have sonar technology that helps us understand underwater obstructions. Granted, those aren't necessarily used in the warmer waters, but it is certainly something that travelers are interested in because they want to support companies and operators that, like I said, are doing well and focused on those conservation efforts. But it is all interconnected, and it connects back to that fitness regimen and eating well and ultimately traveling well. So all of that sort of kind of framed this aspect of honing in on Epicurean Expeditions, and it's really been a home run success for us. I think some other operators operators and some of the past cruise lines that I've worked with, we've highlighted spotlight journeys where maybe we have one or two sailings that are featured around this type of a theme or special interest. But here at Atlas, it's every single voyage throughout the entire summer season in Europe. So the traveler doesn't have to hunt and find these experiences. The only thing that's unique and different is the itinerary that makes it organically distinctive from one voyage to the next. But that also allows for guests to daisy chain the itineraries together and sail for extended periods as well. But like I said, it really turned into a home run success. And now with our guest chefs that have become our expedition explorers with us, they have been coming back to us in record numbers. So it's been a point where we've had to turn people away because I just don't have enough voyages to be able to entertain them all. So that's really kind of what's made this a success. And I think our flexibility with the guest chefs, some of them bringing their families on board. We're a very family-oriented cruise line with Portuguese heritage. We do lean into that. And with our guest chefs, they get to bring their families on board. They holiday with our guests. That really makes them a little bit more enticed with the overall experience. But it just creates a very authentic experience between them and the guests that you really just can't get on a big ship. And, Mara and I were talking a little bit earlier this morning about, the Yachtsman Cook-Off and how the participants in that get to dine with the guest chef and Mara later that evening. And, that is, again, part of that engagement that you don't necessarily get to see whether you're on land or on those bigger ships. And I think that's distinctively unique to what we're providing here under the Epicurean Expeditions concept.
So talking about oh, sorry.
No, I think to Jason's point, I mean, just being on board, that it's the accessibility of, and I think also to the travelers that their travel experts reach out to and their advisors, the Mediterranean, just that adjective has such an allure. And in that allure, when we think Mediterranean means many warm water countries now, but particularly Italy, Greece, Spain, Portugal, southern France. And so I think that intrigue, people think of good food, or shall we say fresh food. And as Jason touched on, the authenticity of it. So to say that we honor that, we embrace that, and come and sail with us because then you get to experience it. I think that's been the unique thing. It's the accessibility, when you say, Jason, and the ability to taste it, to learn that the guest chefs are with them, I'm with them. And again, it's sort of a conversion too, because usually I have found, one of the couples or one part of the party is there because they're big foodies or love Epicurean, and the others are like, well, I'm traveling and this is a beautiful part of the world, and why not? And each of them are like, wow, okay, a little bit more for them than they ever thought. And those that were really geared up for it are like, wow, you all delivered and I learned something. So, that's the home run he's talking about. But I think to say, hey, this is your experience. We're doing all that we can to engage you, for you to enjoy. And we're not going to tell you how to enjoy that. If you want to do a little or a lot, you get to do that. And the intimacy of the yachts provide for that.
So when you talk about the guest chefs and that they really like, coming back and working aboard the ship, can you tell me a little bit, because I'm sure you have conversations with them. It's like, what is attracting you apart from obviously a lovely thing that they can bring the family on and experience the places as they travel along. So are these ships mostly land-based, or where do they come from? Just a little bit of
He can address some of that. I will tell you, just going backwards and forwards, the chefs that come on board obviously come with an amazing ability. They're top chef winners, they're master chefs, James Beard winners. And so they have their depth of knowledge is amazing. One of the things that Atlas has done a really great job on, and I certainly can attest to that, in terms of there are so many wonderful chefs in the world, but not every chef can hold an audience. Not all chefs can engage. So look for a personality that cares very much about what they do, adores sharing it, but also is welcome to receiving guest questions and sharing those experiences. And so those chefs that have become well known through different media enterprises, shall we say, and own restaurants and understand logistics and understand purveying and all of that. They put a human face to our travelers on what it takes. And so we look at there, of course, yes, oh, we have a trip and isn't this exciting? And as Jason says, the fact that their family comes, it makes them more
Mm,
personable to the audience as well. But they come with a knowledge, but they also come with a curiosity because
mm,
they all have been influenced in some way or another by the Mediterranean. They may not necessarily be from this part of the world, but they certainly have experienced this part of the world. So actually, that has proven a very pleasant, if you will, tasty surprise that they are being creative with us as we're
mm,
there, as well as bringing their expertise. So I think that because we do their demos on board, and then dishes on the menu, they are very involved with the guests, but they're also working with our executive kitchen on a very intimate level. I'm really chopping with the chefs and working too. So it's a balance, don't you think, Jason, of finding the right personalities?
mm,
And it's really worked. And I think, everything evolves. But the word is out that we do this very uniquely. And
mm,
we are encouraging them to engage as well. And we have our protocol and they're open to following it. And then they add to it too. And so it makes,
Yeah.
as Jason said, each excursion and each sailing different. We do a walk in the marketplace with them, with the guests,
mm.
those that want to go. So they're seeing them pick the produce. We're explaining as we go why it's here. And so I think it's that engagement. Don't you, Jason? That's a important
I
component.
do. And I would just add to the context of complimenting our onboard team. They really are an
Absolutely.
extension to that. And, like you said on the chef market tours, the guests get to go out in a small group with our executive chef as well as the guest chefs that are with us. And they walk the market, they look at the local produce, they start to understand what is our executive chef looking for when he's selecting fresh fish.
Yeah.
He may not find it at the first stand. He takes them to the next stand and kind of talks about those little details that home chef will take home and
Right.
appreciate. Oh, okay. It's the same as like when we're picking watermelons at home. How do you know when it's ripe? And
Right.
it's those little tips
The
and
knock.
tricks that you sort of pick up along the way.
Yeah.
I want to relate quickly to an experience that I had earlier this summer with
Mm,
Mara and with Chef Ippy Iona, who hails from Hawaii. And like you hinted at, Mara, they may not be from that region of Europe specifically. And in this case, Ippy grew up in Hawaii, and his mother is of Italian heritage. So it certainly was a multicultural family that easily could connect to the European destinations. And in this case, we were in Northern Europe and we went to Galicia, Spain, and farmed the fresh mussels out on a shore excursion activity. We brought those mussels back, and Chef Ippy turned it into a beautiful bouillabaisse for that evening for dinner.
Unbelievable.
So it doesn't get more authentic than that when you're out picking it yourself, and in this case, mussels, and bringing it back on board, and it's turned into this wonderfully memorable dish that I won't forget. He also did
The
a
guests won't either.
no, it was
They-
like, oh my gosh, it was magical. And the simplest things as well. As you know, in northern France, we know about fleur de sal, and Ippy related to the salt that's harvested in the Hawaiian Islands. And ironically, that comes from Antarctica in the deep currents of the ocean and is carried up to Hawaii and ultimately surfaces over in that area where it's farmed and harvested. So he brought that connection of the fleur de sal salt locally in northern France, connected it to about three different dishes. I think one was like a salted cod, another was a
Like
pickles,
cucumber.
just
Yeah,
basic
it's
pickles.
cucumbers.
And who would have known and how to effectively use salt to cure amazing pickles at home. And it doesn't have to be overly complicated. It was that genuine connection that he brought from his home to this onboard experience that kind of brought it all full circle.
And it's very
brilliant.
exciting to Jason's point. It's very exciting to see the chefs have their aha moments as well. And the sea salts, and again, that one ingredient, 100 interpretations. I'm on with Massimo this trip. He's an amazing Italian chef, originally from Venice, but now lives in Canada. And he's having eye-opening moments all about the different tomatoes. And he certainly knows the tomato by the back of his hand, but like, oh, and he will share the stories of why and how, and I will then elaborate on how come. And it's just great to see them enjoying it, because then the guests are like, oh my gosh, they're learning something too. It just keeps it personal and personable. And again, as Jason said, that's a travel memory through the plate. So it's great.
Brilliant. I have a question, Mara.
Okay.
I am sure while you're on, like, generally speaking, and I think, we are those who are interested in cooking, like I'm a huge fan of MasterChef, and
Yes.
chefs tend to be huge personalities, and I think especially traveling to places like Mediterranean, to Italy, and even I think there is a huge difference as well if you're in North Italy and then you find yourself in
Huge.
Sicily and you
Huge.
have some local chefs
Yes. Yes.
joining you and so on, who probably also have strong opinions about how food should be consumed and
Well,
what should be mixed with what, how long it should be. So how do you navigate? And
mm,
I get the whole, and it's actually brilliant. You talked a little bit about selection of guest chefs that you bring on board for the duration of a trip. But if you work with a local chef, who maybe, you know, are kind of set in the ways, they're brilliant in their own ways, but they're
Mhm.
set in the
always.
ways. How
And
do like tell me, talk me through what kind of skills you use
I
to
think um,
to get
well,
them do what you want and not
I
to,
think well, if we approach them, when we
yeah,
approach, first of all,
yeah,
we thought them out because they are, and
yeah.
then really
Mm,
too, we really respect what
mm.
they do. So I think the key word here is diplomacy.
Yes.
And I think I'm very fortunate that way, having been a travel editor
Mm,
and remaining so, I do have an understanding of the different
mm.
cultures. And you're absolutely right. Every industry has their reputations, and chefs have developed a certain type of reputation as being temperamental. I think one of the things when we do a local chef like that, we are, and you have to be very cognizant of where you are and
Yeah.
why they do it that way. So often when I escort those, or when a chef works with us locally, we're developing those programs of having more restaurant experiences in port, because
Hmm.
we piloted it that this summer, and it went so well. And I think we make that very clear, like, this is unique to where we are. And so, and particularly like in Italy, and we've had this even with the guest chefs, sauces are a certain way in a certain region, and you do not use Parmesan here, and you don't use ground pepper, you use white pepper. And so it's part of my job has been, as a
Mm,
culinary commentator and expert, is also to brief our guests, and for the chef immediately to know, and even our guest chefs, they understand that I understand, and that Atlas acknowledges that. So there's give and take. But when we're
mm,
in a local restaurant, and we've decided to go there, we're very aware that why we're there, and what they have is what we're going to get. So we do a very careful
mm,
assessment, and then we do a very respectful explanation to our guests. Hey, this is the real deal, up, down, and
mm.
all around. And also we brief the I think what I've come to see, which is really lovely, as the world opened up again,
Mm,
people are more curious. And I think those locally, particularly vintners and restaurant owners, are very appreciative of those of us who travel. So they
absolutely.
feel very sort of honored, if you will, that we are
Mm,
coming and sharing this experience. We just did an incredible experience in July in Rosa, Spain, on one
Mm.
of our journeys. And there's a beautiful museum there called Il Bulai. Ferran Area, who's one of the top world,
mm.
and he closed his restaurant in
El bully,
2018.
no?
Yes,
Yeah.
Imbuli.
Mm,
He reached his pinnacle, but what he's gone on to do is become an amazing culinary ambassador about food and culture. And so it's because his restaurants become a museum, and we were fortunate enough to sort of brainstorm that idea with some of our guest chefs, and I certainly knew the restaurant world. And I said, you can't go and have this amazing experience and then not have a fantastic meal. And so we were very careful about how we sourced a Michelin-starred restaurant that was on par with what he did. Not fancy,
mm.
refined and real and beautiful. And it was a 32-person restaurant, so we closed the restaurant. We had offered that as an expedition. We didn't know, would people pay for the whole thing. it was sold out in 10 minutes with a 32-person wait list. And
Wow.
when you ask me about an aha moment, that's a forever one for me because he's the icon. But
Absolutely.
have the guests experience that. And the chef who owns that restaurant was beside himself. He was so kind. He served it the way he does things. And they had a full Epicurean expedition. That's a forever memory. I'm still getting emails about it. So I think we are looking at, if we want to create this expedition, how can we then complement it, to your point, with a local restaurant? And local restaurant, we walk in knowing that that's what they're known for, and then we explain who our guests will be, and we meet somewhere in the middle. That's I won't say there aren't moments of like, what? No, but everybody's diplomatic, and all I can tell you is every time we've done it, it's been a home run. So I think it's the respect factor and the curiosity factor that meet in the middle.
Sure.
I had
I
no
would just
doubts
add
about
that,
it, so but I was just, I had to ask that question.
Yeah, I've had in my career, I've had chefs stomp out. We've had chefs say, "You're ridiculous." Not to me personally, but I think the world has become
Yeah,
smaller. I think people are more willing.
receptive, yeah, and
right.
receptive, yeah.
What are you going to say, Jason? Am I missing something?
No, I was just going to add that each of the chefs, certainly have their own personality
Yeah,
and style. And we want to
Which
bring
adds to
that to this.
experience, right? It's, it
yeah,
adds
Exactly.
to
So I
experience, yeah.
don't want to limit that or soften that. We want that to come through. That's what's made them successful in their own career. And we just want to bring that to our onboard experience and connect it to what we're delivering, day in and day out. And yes, it gets tricky once in a while, but I think it also comes from proper planning and preparation. And my team works with these chefs before they get on board
very much.
with setting those expectations, extracting from them what do they want to build, because they're all artists and creators. So it's understanding, what do you have in your repertoire that you can connect to that local destination, and more specifically about the ingredients and the equipment that they need. So by documenting that, we then share with the ship in advance and get them prepared so that we have all the provisioning and the equipment necessary to make it successful for them to execute on board. And we've done, I think, extremely well. There's probably only been, but we learn from these experiences as well, and we continue to improve upon it. And like I said earlier, I feel proud that we have so many of these chefs that have traveled with us beginning 3 years ago and are coming back to us asking, which dates can I get on board for next year? So like I said, it's very limited as far as the number of spaces that we offer. And it's now ramping up into 2027 already with future planning, as you can imagine, and such. So it has really been a winning formula for us. And I think that's what we're seeing from the past guest layer as well, because Atlas is experiencing well over 25% of our guests are returning to us. And in just our short, start of 4 years ago, that's a tremendous accomplishment. And that's a validation, I think, that our guests are telling us, we love what you're doing. And they're telling us they want more destinations. They want to go beyond Europe, and they want to see what else we have to offer and explore with them together.
This is going to be one of my questions, but I do have another one. Well, sorry, Mari, you want to say something?
I think along that line, I think one of the things that the chefs, that accessibility to them, but also listen, they're busy and we remain accessible to them. And I think sort of breaking it down for travelers as we go and enhancing and enriching all in that journey. That's what it's really a connection between all of us, the chef, me as the culinary commentator, ambassador, whatever you want to call it. And so that we are giving them deeper knowledge. And in this time of travel, they want to know more. This, time is the biggest and most valuable commodity. So to value that time and to walk away with something that has enhanced the cultural moment, the culinary moment, it's a win for a journey.
Thank you, Mara. We have another question from the audience, and of course, the world is changing. There are more people with voluntary or needed dietary requirements, and how can Atlas Ocean Voyages execute Epicurean adventures to those who have dietary requirements, whether it's vegan or some special other needs.
Sure.
So
I'll go first. And I say this out of my experience of
Mm.
being in the cruise industry for the last 27, 28 years now. I was genuinely surprised at Atlas and how well we have been able to execute those special requests. And I think
Mm.
it's also conducive to being on a small ship where we can execute a la minute in most cases for our culinary dishes. But the plant-based menu is another hugely successful area for us.
Mm.
Every course, whether it's a soup or an appetizer or a main entree or a dessert, every night we feature vegan-based menu options. And not just at dinner in the dining room, but also for breakfast and lunch,
Mhm.
as well as in our 7 Aft Grill, which is our alfresco outdoor dining that's open in the evening, but even in room service and in our Paula's Pantry, which is our take and go kind of coffee station with fresh smoothies and paninis. But there is a granola bar there that's vegan, for example, that every guest I come across always raves about because it's genius the way it's made, but it's health conscious, and everybody wants the recipe so they can hopefully attempt to make it at
Right.
home. But that has been a huge success for us. And I think it again relates to the small ship aspect of how we're able to execute. But for those guests that have dietary restrictions, whether they're maybe lactose or gluten free, we can accommodate that. We just simply ask the travel advisor to advise our team ahead of the cruise so that we can denote that. But even when they get on board, if that happens to have been missed, our maitre d' and head waiters, they are able to interpret this. And then, like Mara said, we get to know them by first name. We get to know these preferences as well. And I hear so many wonderful compliments from our guests about this aspect. They are surprised at the variety in our culinary offering, but our ability to be able to execute and present beautifully plated dishes that make them feel inclusive versus excluded
Right.
or as extra work.
That's
Okay,
exactly right.
brilliant.
And also, the menu every night, to Jason's point, all of that is clear before they join us on board, or and they always ask again. And the travel advisors do a very good job of letting the team here know in advance. But travelers always ask, "Do you know? And are you sure?" And it's another time where we can then sort of show what we do and that yes, all is well. The other great thing that they do on the menu every night is they have classics. So if the traveler finds things that they like, there's always a steak, there's always a salmon, there's always a chicken dish that's just a classic, a Caesar salad, a phenomenal, I must say, tomato soup. So those are always there. So if someone wants to eat simply, or they find that they don't want the dish of the days, and they have different dishes every night, and then they have one port dish that highlights locally where we are. So everything is fresh and unique, but there's also a classic menu, and it always addresses plant-based, vegan-based, health-based, low salt, whatever it may be. And again, if something has not been addressed and they bring it forward, the team here does an incredible job of that. There's something for everyone at all times, including the 24-hour room service. So there's certainly the other thing I think that I really like about the dining experiences here, and of course, every ship and cruise line does it differently. But because we're smaller, we're very relaxed dining, and it's no reservations necessary. So you can choose when you want to come and eat, and you can sit with new people, with the friends that you're traveling with, whatever it may be. There's a beautiful back deck. So in the warmer weather, like where we are
Mm.
now, so there's a real balance there. And there's something, I mean, I say it all the time, there's something for everyone. And when the guest chefs do something occasionally, like twice during each sailing, they'll do a demo. We do the demos in our lounge where it's a cooking and they get a taste. But sometimes on the dish that they're highlighting that night, they actually cook in the dining room,
Mm.
which is great balance for our executive team. And so again, it brings forward that personality, the uniqueness, and the accessibility. And the guest chefs love it because it's their dish and they know how it's garnished and served. And so it's a very happy balance and a very well run team there, I really have to say. Very
Brilliant.
out of it.
Thank you. I think we're sort of coming to an end. I do have a couple of questions that are future gazing
Okay.
because I am already very excited about the Mediterranean. But what's beyond? Like looking ahead, are there any destinations or culinary traditions that you are most excited to bring into the Epicurean expedition concept? Do we need another ship for that?
Jason can answer that, but can I touch on something, Jason?
Yes, please.
So we have really promoted the Epicurean expeditions through the Mediterranean, and that's,
Yeah.
going further and farther, and that it's wonderful and deeper. But also we on our cultural expeditions, will add a culinary Epicurean component. I mean, one of the most fun ones I've done is Reykjavik, Iceland to Dublin. And along the way, we did lots of whiskey tastings and cheese tastings and honey, lots of honey. Even in Iceland, there are bees that buzz on the moss. So I think those aspects, one of the things that I think Atlas does a beautiful job of blending, and sometimes they're more cultural on one journey versus more Epicurean on another, but there is a combination. And so I think right, Jason, as we reach further into the world, Northern Europe, England, Ireland, Scotland, I've done some Epicurean there, and people are pleasantly surprised, and then they have their aha moments because we're able to explain in a deeper way, and the universal aspects when you sail of the different tastes. So I think we're going further. I know we're thinking of going further, Jason, with new ships, but I'm going to put
We
that
are, yes,
to
and
you. And
very
I'm here
On the
to
excited
tell
about
you
beach.
that.
that there's amazing Epicurean connections there that we will elaborate
For
on,
sure.
right?
Well, the first thing I would highlight is our Canary Islands and
Yes,
Morocco
Yes.
yes.
extension.
Mm.
I know some people don't consider that as part of the Mediterranean, but it does connect to our Epicurean expeditions, and they have been hugely popular with us as well and with our guests. So those are typically more in the spring and in the fall seasons when we're sort of transitioning in and out of the Mediterranean, but have been very popular with our past guests and new guests alike. As far as new destinations, Northern Europe is certainly in our charts. We are doing some things around the English Isles as well as Ireland and Iceland, particularly. Outside of Epicurean, what's new and noteworthy for us is the Canadian Arctic. Next fall, we are exploring from Greenland down along the eastern coast of Canada, which is very well known for the polar bears and the beluga whales. And coming up next month, we will announce our 27 programs that will expand further into the Canadian Arctic, all the way into Hudson Bay and into Churchill. So that's a bit of a preview and a sneak peek. Those are going to be considered part of our polar expeditions. And overall, I should explain that we have three different experiences that we feature on our year-round expeditions. We have our polar expeditions to the North and the South Poles, and then we have our Epicurean expeditions in the Mediterranean, including the Canary Islands and the Morocco regions, as I spoke about. And then we have what we call cultural expeditions. And these are a bit more of a bridge with the local history and architecture or cultural traditions of the destination. And as Mara explained, we do weave in that culinary component to a smaller degree. These are where you might find gin tastings or other local goods that would be brought on board for the guests to
Okay,
be able to taste.
yeah.
So that's where we are right now. There's much more behind the scenes that I'm not necessarily at liberty to share, but I will hint that Asia is in our charts,
Okay.
hopefully very soon.
Great
And
taste there.
exactly. So I think a lot of people have been asking us about this, travel advisors particularly, but we are working on some things that we will hopefully be able to share here in the next few months, I anticipate.
And I would
Brilliant.
say, based on Morocco, I did one of our sailings this summer that went to Tangiers, and we did a fantastic cooking class as well as different spice tastings, and the guests were blown away. And we're doing more of that in 26, Casablanca, Tangiers again. And I think that's a very unique and just intriguing way to approach Morocco and not daunting.
Yep.
So,
I I should also add real quick the table journey concept that
Yes.
Mara introduced that we did over in Roses, Spain, is another part of the evolution of how we're going to grow next year for the summer season 2026. We are currently working on sourcing and curating those individual experiences. I just looked at one yesterday for Rabat that will be considered under this table journey concept. And these are, just to repeat, small experiences for about 22 to 24 guests. And this is what our guests have been telling us is they want these unique behind the scenes kind of hidden opportunities to
Mm.
explore that you may not find anywhere else. So these are quite unique from one voyage to the next, but again, small in nature. And like Mara said, when we've started to introduce these, they've basically flown off the shelf with people looking to book, and we end up with a strong wait list on board. And wait lists work because, as you know, people change their mind and change their plans. So don't always think that that's a negative, but rather maybe an opportunity for those last minute changes.
Well, and I
Mm.
think also one of the things that in as though we're young, we have been listening very closely. So I think you respond to what your marketplace asks for. And so we needed to see if our guests were interested in Epicurean expeditions. And a lot of that is general, whether it's a tasting or meeting a winemaker or a farmer. But really, as a specialist myself and working with the chefs as I do, the deeper dive is very second nature and something that intrigues me. And it's been very eye-opening and quite satisfying to see people want this. And so the table journey is basically a meal with stories behind it as we go. And they're meeting with, as you were saying earlier, that local chef who you might have thought was temperamental and they're not. And there we are, and we're able to explain it, and you're tasting it and you're learning from it. And that is another mouth-watering memory, but you're also getting an edible lesson. And that's not a cooking lesson. That's an enjoyment. That's bringing the senses alive and walking away with that memory and that knowledge. So that's been a really fun thing to see that we can do it. We've wanted to do it since the beginning, but we wanted to wait and see. So we are answering to the demand of what the guest is asking for. And we know that because, as Jason referenced, they're coming back.
That's
So
brilliant. So perhaps the last question for today, because we're really running out of time. But it's been brilliant. That's usually how we measure these things, you know. So for the travel advisors who joined us today, and for those who will read the blog post, what advice would you give them to position Epicurean expeditions as something the clients did not even know they were looking for? So how would you, pitch it, and who is the right client for these trips?
I'll go first. I think overall, the inclusive value that Atlas
Mm.
offers. I think a lot of people are surprised, advisors particularly are surprised at the amount of inclusions that we feature. So alcoholic beverages throughout the ship, whether it's in suite or in the dining room or in the lounges, all inclusive. Gratuities are also included for their guests. Now, shore excursions, we do offer a selection of those as optional additional choices to pick from and pay for. But we do have the cultural immersion that we offer on each and every voyage that's complimentary. All of the cooking demos are complimentary and included. We have local vintners that are coming on board and hosting tastings. Those are also complimentary. So the entire Epicurean expedition concept is virtually inclusive. The only thing that guests pay for are going to be those optional shore excursion experiences, maybe a trip to the L'Occitane Spa. Those treatments are additional.
Mm.
And there are some premium wines that we have on board that are available for those connoisseurs as well. But that's virtually it. Everything else is included.
I
Brilliant.
think on that point, the key thing that we really looked at, and I certainly promote that always on board, is enrichment. We want to enrich your Epicurean experience, your sailing experience, your Atlas experience. And so enrichment means, and again, sometimes we have 50 people come, sometimes it's 20, sometimes it's 100. It depends on, are they so relaxed? Are they tired? Are they, interested in that moment? So whether it's the tastings, the talks, and then the wonderful evening entertainment. So it's not only Epicurean. It certainly
Right.
has that connection. But you know, we want you to have a great time, great food, wonderful drink. The mixologists, the bartenders, they all get to know everyone. I guess I know, you know, when I'm talking, I drink a lot of sparkling water. So I've now come to understand that Mara's drink is just Mara needs her drink. And I'm like, what? It's bubbly water with lime. You know, I'll have my Aperol spritz later, but they just really pay attention and they're so gracious. And you know, those fun drinks and the wines are all available at all times. And the coffee bar, Paula's Pantry, is amazing. There, everybody loves the cappuccinos and macchiato and ever. So I think that all inclusive, but it all stems from wanting to enrich their experience, and by enriching, engaging them in whatever level, layer, expedition they want to do. Right? I think that's it. And you asked us at the beginning, I really do believe two things. I think that one bite, that one sip does create a memory for them, or at least knowledge that they didn't know. And I think the relaxed approach and the conscientious approach sort of makes them feel very special. And so that's a win. And one of the things they all hear me say is, you know, from person to person, dish to dish, culture to culture, the world really does become a smaller place around the table. And that's what I highlight on each journey that I do with Atlas and with every guest chef that I comment with, because that's what we're talking about. You know, this is about food uniting us, and learning from it. So the enrichment, and Atlas just is doing a beautiful job on that. And I'm very proud to be a part of that.
What a brilliant way to finish this interview. Thank you both so very much for joining me today. Safe travels, Mara, and wishing you amazing future culinary experiences personally and
Join us,
showcasing
and
the
thank
guests.
you. Thank you.
Well, I hope so. I would love to.
Thank you very much. We're very excited that we can offer this to the travel advisors and to the travelers, because it's a really wonderful way to see the world and the Mediterranean and the rest of it as we keep evolving. Right, Jason?
For sure.
Brilliant. Thank you, Jason, as well. And I'm sure we'll be in touch sooner rather than later. And thank you to all our audience as well who joined us live. And the recording will be available later. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thanks.
Bye.